All right. I am so excited, so honored to have Manny Garcia here on the Move Happy Movement podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Move happy. I love it. Excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, for those that don't know your background, when I always love to share how I connect with people. So we connected on LinkedIn, and I read through your story, kidnapped to millionaire. Like you've been through some hard times, and you've also been through some amazing high times. For those that don't know who you are, why don't you share a little bit about your origin story?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the founder of Unslackable, and Unslackable for me is a notion of just really truly living the best possible life that you can live,
Hmm.
um, based around whatever's most important to you, right? So if that's
Yeah.
your relationships, if that's career, if that's finances, if that's health, whatever, but really is trying to have balance and have these different buckets in your life where you really are maximizing each of those buckets. Um, and there was a paradigm shift that happened for me during the pandemic,
Hmm.
where for the last 20 plus years, I've been working with Fortune 200 companies, and I build uh, badass teams, sales teams specifically, right? So the teams that I've worked with and that I've developed have sold over $1 billion worth of the products that we sell, and
Hmm.
I'm used to working with people that are good people that kind of have an idea of what they want, and then we turn them into
Hmm.
performance rock stars, right? Or we take teams that are good teams and we make them great. And
Hmm.
there's a process that we go through on an individual basis to get the entire team humming, to get the culture going, to get the people
Hmm.
thinking the right way, to get people to act a certain way. And a lot of the success that I've had over the past 20 plus years is based on my own personal experience in dealing with some really difficult times, right? So when I was growing up, make a long story short, my sister was in the middle of a car accident. She lost an arm in the process. My parents were
Hmm.
divorced. It was a very toxic divorce.
Yeah.
My father was obsessed with the fact that my mother left him, and he was just a bit psychotic. And in the
Hmm.
middle of the chaos with my sister losing her arm, being in the hospital, all these other things, he shows up unannounced, and he basically prepositions, "Hey, tells my mom, let me take Manny to have breakfast, while you deal with everything with Mimi." And
Hmm.
that was the last day anybody saw me. So I was 5 years old at the time when I was kidnapped by my dad, which is weird, right? Like it's your father. Like, how are you kidnapped? But I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize I was kidnapped for many years until one day I was eating lunch in a school called St. Gabriel's Catholic School in New York City with my buddy. And,
Hmm.
we're sitting there and we're eating lunch, and there's these little milk cartons. And back then, they would
No
place
way.
missing kids on
Yeah.
the milk cartons, right? So
Yeah.
I'm
I
looking at
remember.
the little girl that's on my milk carton, not really thinking much about it. I don't even understand what that really was. I'm 9 years
Hmm.
old, and my buddy taps me on the shoulder. And he's like, "Hey, Manny, this kid looks like you, right?" And I'm like, "What?
No
Let me see." So I
way.
look at it, and there was a picture of me when I was 5 years old, and it had my name and missing on the top, like that was my title missing. I'm like, "The hell?
Wow.
Like, how am I missing? Like, this makes I felt I was shocked, right? Like I felt like I had done something bad. Like I didn't understand it. So then
Yeah.
we're done eating lunch. He goes and he throws everything in the trash. I quickly reach in, grab the little milk
Mhm.
carton, fold it, put it in my pocket. And then later that evening, my dad comes home. He was a cab driver in New York City at the time. I say, "Hey,
Mm.
Dad, I think I'm in trouble." He immediately looked at me like, because he used to give me some good whoopings. He'd be
Mhm.
like, "Oh, what you do now?" type of thing. I said, and I show him the milk carton, and his eyes open up this big, and
Like
he's like,
he did
"Oh
something
yeah." He's
wrong.
like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Well, don't worry about that. There's people that are trying to, take you away from me. Blah blah blah. Bad people, whatever." That's how he prepositioned it. And the very
Wow.
next day, we were in a car driving from New York City back to Miami. No furniture, nothing like that. After a few days, he found another place to live, and then a couple
Oh
weeks later,
my
then our
gosh.
furniture arrived with some trucks and whatever. But yeah, so we were always jumping around and moving around, and
Wow.
it wasn't so much that I was kidnapped. It was a lot of the psychological warfare that I went through while I was living with my dad. My dad
Mhm.
was a brilliant, gifted musician. As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, he was so brilliant that somebody heard him playing music in Spain. He was Spaniard, in
Mhm.
Spain, that were
Mhm.
part of the military branch, the Spanish Navy, actually. And
Mm.
they actually invited him to join the Spanish Navy at that time to
Oh.
represent a boat that still travels today called El Juan Sebastián del Cano, which is a
Mm.
trading naval ship. And
Mhm.
basically his job was to lead the orchestra off the boat, and then all the soldiers would, or the marine men would then
Yeah.
follow into the different countries wherever they port, right?
Mhm.
So he went literally from rags, walking around with a fork and a knife in his pocket, because this was during the time of the Great Depression in Spain, to being invited to now wear suits and travel, the world on this boat and represent his country and all this stuff, right? So, um, he fell in love with the notion of being an American. He fell in love with the notion of being able to be that next Glenn Miller, or kind of like a Liberace or whatever,
Yeah.
who was really that good, right? So he saw all these people with all this fame in the United States, and he realized, well, man, I could probably do the same thing. Well, it didn't quite work out that way for him. So when he exiled and he stayed in New York City and he never got back on the boat, then he went through his own life challenges, right? So he didn't know
Mhm.
English, he didn't have any connections, he wasn't able
Mhm.
to really pursue his passion in music like he thought he was going to be able to. So then he, gets married and then goes through the nuances of life, and so then he starts to live his dream of music through the kids, which led to the divorce,
Mm.
right? My He was
Mhm.
very physically abusive, verbally abusive with the girls. And my mom said,
Mhm.
finally, enough is enough. I can't do this no more. So that was the whole purpose for the divorce. So
Yeah.
then, when the divorce took place and then the kidnapping took place, then obviously I became the next kid, right? As soon as I was 9 years old, I became that kid that now he was gonna, live his dreams through, right?
Yeah.
So, and that became very, very difficult, very toxic, a lot of beatings, a lot of verbal abuse. I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel connected. I didn't have an outreach to anybody that could kind of help me with some of the challenges that I was dealing with, right? I was very depressed. I was suicidal. I actually tried ending my life 3 times. Luckily, I failed. So imagine that, right? Like
Yeah.
your
Luckily
dad
you
is telling
failed.
you every day you're not good enough to play a piano and you're getting beat because you're not, and then you try killing yourself and then you're not good enough at doing that, right? So I was just all messed up in the head, right?
Mm.
Um, but then later in life, he ended up passing away when I was 11 years old in a motorcycle accident, and
Oh,
his death
wow.
was kind of like my salvation, right? Because the pain went
Mm.
away there.
Mhm.
But then I had to deal with a whole nother level of weird situations, right? Coming back to my mom's house, she hadn't seen me, I hadn't seen her in years. She didn't know how to parent me at the time. She went through a whole level of suffering with my sister when she lost her arm. So I was kind of like self-parenting along the way. And then that was
Mhm.
a bit of a toxic environment too, with the relationship that she was in. And there was
Mhm.
some abuse stuff going on there that I was exposed to. And then there was levels of poverty that weren't desirable, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then as I went through life, then I started realizing that some of the people that were giving me the best substance were older people, right? So there was one gentleman, Francisco, who was a teacher that kind of took me underneath his wing. I was probably about 14, 15 years at the time, year old at the time.
Mhm.
And he
Mhm.
started planting these seeds within me that kind of started to open up my mind and my objective and perspective on life. And
Mhm.
so then I made a paradigm shift. I went from being this kid that was like super depressed, angry all the time. Um, there was all kinds of issues that I was dealing with, right? To then all of a sudden it kind of clicked, and I said, well, maybe I need to become a force for good for other people. And I didn't know really how to do that other than being funny. I was kind of like a
Mhm.
kid. I was really funny, right? And so I
Mhm.
remember I bought these pair of jeans that were kind of like whitewash, and I was a really good painter drawer. And
Mhm.
on one leg I did uh, Roger Rabbit, and on the other leg I did Jessica. I forget what her name was. And then a big heart like on my butt, whatever. And I showed up to school that way, right? And then immediately people started cracking up. They're like, "What the hell is wrong with you? Like, where'd you get those pants?" And I started getting kind of like addicted, right, to the smiles on people's faces, right?
Yeah.
Bringing joy onto people's faces. And the school that I was going to in Puerto Rico at the time, there was a lot of bullies, and
Mm.
I was beat up by a grown man my whole life. So it was very weird for somebody my age to kind of hit me and for it to really hurt, right? Because I was being trained by a real man my whole life, right?
Yeah.
So I remember my first fight was because I was defending somebody who was being bullied, and
Mm.
I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try to end bullying,
Good for
throughout
you.
this process in middle school and high school. And,
Mhm.
not that I was wanting to get into fights every day, but, some of that type of stuff happened by osmosis because,
Yeah.
I was getting in the middle of 2 people. But anyway, so it was like a combination of let's be funny and then also let's try to, protect some people that need protection, right? And
Mhm.
again, I was still very this was kinda like a fake it till you make it type of thing, right? I was kinda like addicted to the emotions of being a force for good, towards others, but I still had a lot of unresolved issues in my own life, right? Like it didn't just happen over. I didn't just cure myself overnight, right?
Mhm.
And then you go through life, you graduate, right? I graduated with honors. And then 2 days after I graduated, I decided I want to move back to the States. Luckily, one of my sisters, actually Mimi, the one that lost the arm, was living in
Mhm.
Orlando, moved with
Mhm.
her. And then little by little, you also get beat right along the way. Like you're trying to figure out life, and you go through jobs, and then you get fired, and then you go through relationships and people break
Mhm.
up. You go through relationships, people
Yeah.
cheat on you, right? Like, and I was just like, man, it's just like, why is all of this happening to me? Right. And there was this turning point in my life where I remember we got pregnant when I was really young. I was 20 years old, and
Mhm.
Jasmine was born when I was 21. And I wanted to
Mhm.
be like a different type of dad, right? Like I didn't want to be like my dad, right? And I remember
Yeah.
watching something from Oprah where she was interviewing. This was, I mean, a bazillion years ago. She was interviewing people that had been incarcerated for being very abusive, right? I
Mhm.
remember this one guy saying, "Well, the reason that I do what I do is because that's the only thing I've ever known." Right. And when I heard that, I remember saying to myself, that's not going to be my excuse. Like, I need to figure out a
Absolutely.
way to break the chain so that my kids don't ever go through the pain that I went through. Right.
Yeah.
So then I kind of made that a life mission, a lot of self development, a lot of books, a lot of CDs, during a time where internet really wasn't a thing.
Mhm.
um, and then you go through life, and then you start to realize, wait a second, maybe all these things are happening to me because they're happening for me, so that I
Yes.
can continue to be a force for good, and so that I
Mhm.
can obviously relate to people that might be going through some major challenges in their life. And anyway, make a long story short, all of that stuff that I just shared with you are a lot of the things that I have used for the last 20 plus years in terms of, getting people to the next level, getting teams to the next level,
Mhm.
being that shining star within organizations or within, performance environments that are super stressed, right? So my
Mhm.
concept today is very similar, right? So I told you that I decided to kind of be like, create a fun environment, right? A safe environment. So that's my
Mhm.
first approach in dealing with people or teams, is we're going to have a fun environment. We're going to have a safe environment
Yeah.
where people can play full out, where they can maximize their strengths and their resources, and
Mhm.
they can really use their talents and their abilities to become the best version of themselves. And we do that through a lot of transparency, a lot of communication, a lot of engagement, understanding the individual players and all of those little things. So, make a long story short, I've made a bunch of money over the course of the last 20 plus years. And then going through this pandemic, I realized, wait a second, some of my best people, some of my strongest people, some of my best performers are struggling big time right now mentally, right? And these
Mhm.
are these are champions in sales, right? Like your
Yeah.
shit has to be right at home for you to go and
Mhm.
perform consistently every day in a sales
Yep.
environment which is so
Yep.
high pressure, right? So I started to see a lot of this thinking thinking. I started to
Mm.
see a lot of people kind of like afraid for the first time in decades. Oh my God, what does this mean to me, to my career? What does it mean to our industry? What's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to me? Right. So there was a lot of fear. And I said,
Mhm.
wait a second, I need to do something where we can contribute massively, create some
Mm.
clarity, give people some
Mhm.
action items and some tasks that they can do to take their life to the next level. So within a 90-day period, I created my first real published. I've created many private books and things like that for corporations and businesses before, but this is the first one that's published like for the world, and it's the Unslackable
Mhm.
Planner. And there's just some massive, powerful tools there that really help people think, journal, plan, tap into their creativity to really become hopefully the best version of themselves. So it's kind of like having, a life coach or performance coach in your pocket. And it's a 60-day tool that really helps people to reframe and to develop, those powerful habits. So that's
I
a
love.
that's a little bit about my crazy story, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the planner. So, who's it for and how can they get it?
Awesome. So unslackable.com is the website where you could get it. I
Mhm.
don't have it on Amazon or anything like that right now. And the reason for that is for the first 2,000 copies that I had printed. It's a beautiful, actually, let me see if I have I have one here. I can show you real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, let's see it.
All right, so let me put my headphones back on. So this is the planner right here. So
Awesome.
everything about the tool is specifically designed. The color, it's orange. So orange, if you
Mhm.
look up the color orange, it's a powerful color, right? It's about the
Mhm.
sun, it's about life, it's about passion, it's about purpose. So some people don't like the color orange, but as you can see here, you know, I made orange my mission, right? My mission color. The planner's 100% sustainable, so it's vegan leather. It's made out of recycled
Cool.
paper. Actually, these were actually printed by one of the best publishers in Italy. So it's a
Ooh.
fantastic tool. Now, inside of the planner, what I did is I built a few different components. So it
Hmm.
starts off with a little bit of the psychology of success. What does success really mean? And
Love
what is
that.
the formula, right? So if there's a
Hmm. Hmm.
formula that you could follow, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right?
Yeah.
This is what it looks like, right? And it starts off with getting 100% crystal clear on exactly what you want on an emotional basis, right? Because a lot of the times, you know, we think that we really, let's say we want money. Oh, I want to make $100,000. Okay, well, that's great. But why do you want that 100 grand? Right. So it's
Hmm.
number one is getting crystal clear on something that is passion driven that will juice you and that will create sustainability, right? Because a lot of times we
Hmm.
get hot about something, we start off with it, and then we have these New Year's resolutions, and 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, we're done, right? So it
Hmm.
has to be embedded within your core, your belief system, and then that will have sustainable success. That will give you that. So once you know what you really truly want, now there's some tools in here where you get very creative with mind mapping exercises and things of that nature to really kind
Cool.
of decide how you're going to put together the pieces that are needed to put together in order for you to achieve that thing that you want, right? So there's some action planning tools there. Then that transitions over into a vision board. So now that you know what you want, now that you
Hmm.
have action plans around what you want, then let's go ahead and put that into an environment where you can visually see it, touch it,
Hmm.
experience it emotionally every single day. And there's a process for that. You can start off with what's in the book. And then what I like to do, I digitize it, I put it on my phone, I put it on my desktop, I put it on my laptop. So everywhere that I'm engaged within my day, I'm seeing it multiple times. Right? So, and that's designed so that your subconscious mind really ties
Hmm.
into those things that you want, those images of the things that you want. If it's health, if it's beautiful relationships, if it's something monetarily or whatever the case might be, right?
Hmm. I love
And
that.
then the next portion of it is taking massive action, right? And that's where then there's a journaling piece and there's a blocking days and weeks and there's reviews that you go through and you start off with morning mindset rituals, then you block out your day. There's a lot of open-ended questions to get you to think about, well, what's the most important thing I need to focus on today, or
Yeah.
who can I connect with today that's going to help me get there sooner or whatever. And then we have evening review section where you go through and you say, okay, did I do what I said I was going to do? If not, why didn't I do it? What do I need to carry over? What do I need to drop? You know, that way you're always being as productive as you can. Um, and that's basically the planner, you know, so it's a great
Yeah.
tool. Now I'm not so keen. Like to me right now, the push is not to sell a million copies of the stuff. It's really to get the word out, right? Because the
Hmm.
teachings of what's in the planner can still be taught in a free environment. There's a lot of people that are struggling, a lot of people that aren't working right. There's a lot of people that don't
Yeah.
have, you know, $35 to invest in a planner, right? And I get that. So part of the Unslackable mission is to provide shows like this and content like this to really get people thinking and get creative and to do all the things that the planner allows them to do. So thank you
I
for the
love
question.
that. Yeah. And I know you said, you have powerful sales teams that you've helped make a lot of money. So I'm assuming that that's kind of your main target for people to use it, or do you think it could also be used for people outside of sales as well?
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. So the way that I wrote the planner is designed for anybody, right? Like right now, for example, I'm doing some coaching sessions with executives, right?
Love
In
it.
big corporations, because the core reality is that in order for you to have the create the best version of yourselves, we have to
Hmm.
dig deep,
Yeah.
right? So this is written in a way that's open ended. So if it's money that you want, great. It's going to give you all the tools that you need for that. If it's entrepreneurship, if it's a business, if it's health, if it's
Hmm.
relationships, right? So whatever it is that you want to do, you're going to figure that out on your own. It's open ended and it's designed in a way where you are going to remember the first step is really truly understanding what it is that you truly want and why is it that you really want it, right? So you
Yeah.
start there. Once you figure that out, right, then you can move forward. And there's a section in here too, which I call the life fleet evaluation, which is
Hmm.
I look at it this way, right? You and I, we're captains of our own life, right? Like we literally have the steering wheel in our hands of these planes in our life, right? That we can take from point A to point B because life is a
Hmm.
journey, right?
Hmm.
So each wing on this exercise represents a major category in your life. So it could be relationships, it could be health, it could be career, it could be finances. So there's 16 different categories where you rate yourself. So one, if you're a one, that means you really are struggling in that bucket, right?
Okay.
A 10 is the tip of the wing. So the idea is you shade in, right? Let's say you give yourself a score of 5 on relationships and you want to get that to a 10. Awesome. Well, now that's a starting point. So now that's one of your whys. Well, I really
Mhm.
want to take my relationship with whatever, with your spouse or your mother or your sister, whoever it is, to the next level. Awesome.
Mhm.
Now that we know that that's what you really want and why you want that, because time is of the essence, and my family's getting older, I'm missing out, I want to miss whatever that is, right? Okay, cool. Now let's put together an action plan and how you're going to take that relationship to the next level, right? So there's 8 planes, there's 16 wings, there's 16 categories in your life. You rate yourself, and then from there you decide, where am I going to work? It's a very powerful tool because we're taking personal inventory of
Mhm.
all of those buckets in our life that really matter. And then from there you say, you know what, for the next 3 months, I want to focus on relationships. I want to
Yeah.
focus on my health, and I want to focus on my finances. Cool, great. Now let's put some action plans in place for that, right?
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
planner is really an open-ended, powerful tool to help anybody with whatever it is that you want. This one lady that I'm working with right now, she's been a C-level executive for a really long time, but she's going through some stuff in her life right now where she's kind of all the things that she's done in the past that are just like easy, right? Like, oh, duh, like have kind of they've been masked by all the issues that she's dealing with right now. So it's just going through a couple processes. You go, oh, yeah, that's what I used to do, 10 years ago when I was at the top of my game and my business was at the top of whatever. Right. So
Mhm.
it's just a lot of this stuff is just really fundamental. It's just the
Mhm.
basics, right? The best things in life are simple things. If
Yes, I
we
agree.
overcomplicate them, then it's so difficult, right? Like I've seen people trying to start these diets and they overcomplicate their life with macros, and they go from nothing to trying to solve all the nutritional
Yeah.
issues of the world with scales and macros and this and that, and they get so flustered and confused. They're like, what, screw
Yeah.
it, I'm not going to do this, right? Well, it's just real
Exactly.
simple. You want to lose weight, less carbs, more protein, move, drink more water, eliminate sodas. Just let's start with the simple steps, and then you can go from there.
I love that. I love that you also have a way for them to measure their own inventory and they can customize which area of their life they want to focus more on. Because what gets measured gets improved. So I think that's phenomenal. For those that, are in a similar industry as yourself, or aspiring to get into the sales industry, what are some tips and strategies from your own expertise that you've been able to utilize and keep in a positive mindset? Because you get that no a lot, right? Like, and I mean, rejection all day for that, 1% yes. What are some things you've learned to keep your energy high and keep a positive outlook?
That's great. So number one is you have to understand that it's a numbers game, right? You have to
Mhm.
understand that. And that's a little bit different because most people are brought up in an environment where failing is a bad thing, right?
Yep.
In
Yep.
sales, you are going to fail more than you are going to succeed. And what I mean
Mhm.
by that is when you're in sales in our industry, right? Like my top rep is closing about 50% of the time, which means out of two
That's
customers,
good.
they're going to close one. But this person is one of the most unbelievable people that I've ever met. Typically
Hmm.
in our industry, it's about a 25% close, right? Which
Hmm.
means that you got to go through 75 prospects or 75 presentations in order to get
Hmm.
25 deals, right? Now, just think about that for 1 second. Let's just say that you are a brain surgeon and you have a 25% success rate, right?
No
Um,
good.
I don't know about you, but I don't want that person
I
operating on
don't
my
want that,
right?
doctor.
Correct, right? So in life in general, the expectation is that you are killing it 99.99% of the time,
Yeah.
right? So for people getting into a sales environment, you got to understand number one, it's a numbers game. Number two, what I love about sales is that you are a little bit more control. You're a little bit more in control of your potential income. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that, I remember when I was going through my life struggles, one of my first jobs coming to Orlando was I was a deli clerk at a supermarket. I was that guy shaving ham and shaving cheese and putting
Yeah.
little wax papers for my and I took pride in it. Now let me tell you something. I was one hell of a ham slicer. but no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much attention to detail, I was getting paid
Mhm.
back then $6.75 an hour. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mhm.
No more, no less, right? And I
Mhm.
remember thinking to myself, how am I ever going to take my life to the next level? I mean, I can't, and thank God I was living with my sister at the time. But I remember
Mhm.
thinking to myself, how am I going to move out on my own? How am I going to afford car insurance? How am I going to afford? I'm not, I was freaking out.
Yeah.
And then I remember my sister telling me, Manny, look, your personality is cool. It's funny, da, 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 da. Why don't you become a server? Then that way, at least you can, work for tips. And so that was kind of like an entry level
Mhm.
sales job for me, right? Like I didn't even
Yeah.
understand it that way at the time, but I became a server, right? And the same thing. I was, back then in Orlando, Florida, it was like $2.10. It was like two ten an hour, but then you're there for the tips, right?
Wow.
So then I started to realize, wait a second, if I can increase the amount of food or the items people are ordering in the restaurant, right? If I can make the average ticket bigger, then I'm going to get that 10, that 12, that
Mhm.
15%, right? Gratuity
Yeah.
off of the, right? So then I started, okay, so let me become a master at linguistics when it comes to describing, the baby
Mhm.
back ribs with the juicy honey barbecue sauce and that, right?
Yeah.
Or asking some questions to find out what are they in the mood for, and then make some recommendations or add some vino, some wine, or some
Mhm.
cocktail drinks, right? So the idea is to get the average ticket up.
Yeah.
So then I did that for 8 years, freaking rocked it. I was loving
Mhm.
what I was doing. I was serving people, taking care of people, making people
Mhm.
happy, getting them exactly
Mhm.
what they wanted. They would come in for a hamburger, they walk out eating a New York strip or something instead, right? Like, walking, oh, this is a great meal, great service, whatever. And then a friend of mine got started in sales
Mhm.
with the thing that I've been doing for the last 20 plus years. And then I see her come in one day and she's got like a Rolex and she's got diamond, hoops and all this other stuff. I'm like,
You're
what
like,
happened
"Okay.
here? I'm like, what's going on here? Did you
What's up,
marry
girl?"
rich? Like, what's happening? Right. And she's like, no, I told you, I was going to go sell real estate, blah, 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 whatever. I'm like, well,
Mhm.
I gotta know more about this. Right.
Yeah.
Now, that to me was a scary step, and for anybody listening, I think you can
Mhm.
resonate, right? So at the time, I was working for Planet Hollywood at the time. I was a corporate trainer. By that time, I was a corporate trainer traveling around, opening up all the new restaurants, right? So I was kind of hooked on the
Mhm.
traveling piece and working with
Mhm.
celebrities when we're doing the grand openings. I'm taking care
Yeah.
of Demi Moore, Bruce Willis, Whoopi
Oh,
Goldberg,
wow.
like all these people, right? So I was kind of like addicted to that like exciting portion of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But no matter how much I worked, I was making about 45, 50,000 a year, but I was working doubles all the time. And I mean, it was just crazy, right?
Mhm.
And my friend went to do what she was doing. She immediately made like $150,000 like her first year in the business, right? So I'm like, man, life would be amazing if I could do that.
Yeah.
But here's a catch. So I was a father at the time, married, responsibilities, bills, all that
Mhm.
other stuff. I had a little safety net, had this little cushion, and
Mhm.
going into this other thing was 100% commission. There was no hourly, there was no salary,
Yeah.
nothing like that, right?
That's a
And
risk.
y'all, huge risk, right? And I was
Mhm.
broke. When I tell you I was broke, I was broke. I had $450 in the bank at that time. I had like $60,000 in credit card debt. Like it was crazy. There was some medical
Wow.
stuff that went on with my daughter when she was born. So, and I was just like, how am I going to do this commission only? I started kind of doubting myself a little bit, right?
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
afraid of, messing up or whatever. And then I remember reading a book by Tony Robbins, and it was like, the message was like, you got to burn the bridge. You got to freaking burn the
Yes.
bridge. Like
Burn
you just
the
got to go burn the
boats.
bridge, right? So then I remember I went to my GM, Dan Leonard, at the time. I'm like, Dan, hey, listen, man, I got an opportunity to do this thing, blah, blah, blah. I said, but I need you to do me a favor. He's like, what? I said, no matter what, I says, you got to promise me that you won't hire me back. And he looks at me like, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean? Maybe you're one of my shining stars. You're amazing. If things don't work out for you, of course I want you back. I'm like, no, no, no. I said, yeah, I
No.
need you right now to give me your word that no matter what, you're gonna kick me. If I ever come here begging for a job, you're just gonna kick me out, right? Because I needed to
Good
just
for
burn the
you.
bridge, right? And he looked
Yeah.
at me and he's like, dude, he's like, you're one of the craziest people I've ever met. He's like, all right, let's shake on it. So we shook on it. And then I got into sales, right? And
Mhm.
make a long story short, it was the transformation financially that I needed in my life. Like it was
Yeah.
it was awesome. Like got out of debt within the first 9.5 months, broke all kinds of records. I made it. I think the first 9.5 months I made over $150,000, like,
Wow.
rookie rocket of the year, like all that crap. Right.
Yeah.
Um, but what I then realized was that when you're in sales, you truly have an ability to control your outcome when it comes to your compensation, right? So your
Mhm.
income is in direct proportion with your ability to influence, with your ability to talk, with your
Mhm.
ability to have fun, with your ability to be the best version of yourself, right? And
Yeah.
I was starving for success, like I really was, right? So I remember my trainer John Barra at the time. I said, listen, you tell me what I got to do. Whatever you tell me to do,
Mhm.
I'll do. Like, if you tell me to jump, I'm going to ask how high do you want me to jump, right? Like, I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm just going to go freaking do it, right?
Yeah.
So she says, what I want you to do is for the first 90 days, and this is a golden nugget for anybody that's listening, right? She said, for the first 90 days in this industry, I want you to live, eat, breathe the sales process. Okay. I want you to
Mhm.
listen to positive stuff. I want you to listen to the Tony Robbins, to the Zig Ziglars, to the Les Browns, to the Brian Tracy's,
Mhm.
to whatever. I don't want you to listen to radio. I don't want you to watch the news. I
Mhm.
don't want you to watch
Mhm.
TV. When I tell you that for the first 90 days, I want you to live, eat, and breathe it. Every second that you're awake, that you're not here, I want you in the car, at home, whatever. I want you studying. I want you, perfecting your craft.
Yeah.
And I saw all these people in this environment making all kinds of crazy money. And I said, you know what? Wait a second. I can do the same. And that's exactly what I did. I remember recording my presentation once I was done with training, and then live, like when I was with somebody, and I would listen to it all the time, and I would fine tune my vocabulary, and I would fine tune my tonality, right? So to make sure that I was being as influential as I was reading all kinds of books and all kinds of stuff. And make a long story short, again, that led to that growth, right? And the other thing I did is I didn't try to figure this thing out on my own. So that's golden
Mhm.
nugget number 2, is find
Mhm.
somebody who has the sales results that you want, who is
Mhm.
that rock star, and then see what they're doing, see how they're doing it, listen to what they're saying, right? And all you have to do is mirror that, obviously with your own personality, right? Because
Mhm.
personalities change, but
Yeah.
there's sales there. Success leaves clues,
Mhm.
and if you can pick up those golden nuggets and you implement those within your sales process, then you're going to achieve a lot more success. I had no desire to reinvent the wheel, zero. Like I
Mhm.
just wanted, and that's what I did. There was 2 people that were the rock stars of the whole team. One of
Mhm.
them never helped anybody ever. Like I asked some people, say, "Oh yeah, good luck. He's never going to help you." But then, I started chatting with the guy, and I realized that he loved steaks. And it just so happened that there was a steakhouse right down the street from where we were selling. And I told
Uh-huh.
the guy, I said, "Hey man," Dan was his name. I said, "Hey man, listen, I heard that you love steaks." I said, "You know what? I am broke. I am financially broke." I said, "I see how well you're doing. If you don't mind, I would love to be able to pick your brain, and I will compensate you for it in the form of whatever steak the steakhouse offers, right? Like whatever you want,
Oh,
I will do it." Right. And I was broke at the time when because this was right in the very beginning. But I just did it no matter. It was like
you knew it was
$150.
worth
It was
it.
like $150 meal, whatever. But guess what? He chuckled at first. He's like, "Okay, now that's a different approach. Nobody's ever never offered
Yeah.
me a steak before, so I'm in for that one, right?" So we went to the steakhouse, and we sat down, and as we were eating, he gave me some golden nuggets that I use, and
Uh-huh.
it became a blessing. So
That's
definitely I would say, if you're
powerful.
gonna get in sales, you have
Yes.
to let go of rejection. You're gonna get rejected
Mhm.
more than you're gonna succeed. But then you gotta feed off of those wins. So every time you get that deal, you're gonna feed off it. And you have to review, right? So when you don't get a deal, what went wrong? What could I have
Mhm.
done differently? And ask the people too. A lot of times we just say, "Hey, listen, just a good crazy question, Mary and John, what would have made the difference today, in order for us to have moved forward, with whatever,
Mhm.
right? Can you just be brutally honest with me so that I can
Yeah.
become better, so I can help, so I can serve the next person better?" And sometimes they'll tell you what they want, and then you go and you give it to them, and guess what? And then they're buying from you,
Then they
right?
buy.
Yeah, they buy. "Oh, well, I didn't even think about it. Well, if I could do this, or if I could do that, or if I could solve that problem for them, would that make sense?" "Oh, yeah, that would make sense."
Mhm.
"Well, you know what? Duh," because sometimes you're pitching in a way that is what I call pitching from your own pocket, right? Or pitching from
Mhm.
your own belief system, and you're not really
Mhm.
focused on what really the client needs, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's a numbers game, just got to
Yeah.
roll with the punches, become a master of your craft, know the
Mhm.
competition, know your
Mhm.
product inside and out, master that sales process, and stay consistent with the sales process. That way, if something stops working, all you got to do is go right back to the sales process, and then you'll get realigned with being able to sell.
I love that. And that's so powerful. And you touched on our second pillar when you talked about, finding that rock star salesperson, or like, figuring out a way to build community within your job frame so you can increase your income. What are some other strategies you've learned as far as it could be in the workplace or otherwise, building community, whether it's, at work, in the sales environment, or otherwise, that you might want to share with our audience?
So I'm glad that you asked that question. So I just read a book called Outliers, right?
So
And
good.
yes, it's a great book. It's a fantastic book. And basically, the premise there is when you take a look at people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all these people, right?
Mhm.
The reason they're who they are is because they had exposure to computers in a time where nobody had exposure to computers. And
Yeah.
they had exposure to those computers for so long before even computer engineers and all that, because computers were so expensive back in those days, right? So by the
Yeah.
time they were teenagers, late teens, they knew more about coding and programming than anybody else, right, in
Yep.
the world. And that's how they were able to take, Mac and Windows to a whole nother level. But
Mhm.
that only happened because of community. Because in
Mhm.
Bill Gates' case, I think it was Bill Gates, his family, they were pretty influential and they had access to people that had access to computers, which then
Mhm.
gave Bill Gates the ability to spend all this time with these computers, right?
Yeah.
So community is everything. A lot of the
Mhm.
times I think that we walk around with a little thing here called ego, right? And
Mm.
if we can just learn to take this ego, to crumble it up and throw it in the trash, and we can humble ourselves to say, maybe there's better answers to the questions that I have out there somewhere else versus you trying to figure them out on your own,
Yeah.
then that is where you have progress, because somebody else that's been in sales for has gone through 25 years of trial and error, and that the way that they operate today is very different than the way that they did in the beginning. So why
Mhm.
do you have to go through that pain of 25 years? You don't have to. So go
Mhm.
and connect with those people, connect with the people that have the right answers, right? People that have
Mhm.
proven the pudding, that you're taking advice from. A lot of times we take advice from people that we shouldn't take advice from, right?
Yeah.
It cracks me up. I see people that have the worst relationships in the world, giving advice on relationships to other people. I'm like, really? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, now you might be able to give them advice on what not to do, right? Here's
Yep.
what you shouldn't do, because this is what I do and my relationship is shit because of it. So don't do this, right? But I prefer to go out there and find people that are kicking ass at something, right? Whether it's their
Mhm.
health, whether it's whatever it is. And I pour myself into all these buckets, right? Because it's important. And then I just kind of model after and I role model after those people that are
Mhm.
better than I am in those categories. And I
Mhm.
have exponential growth in the process. And that's one of the key to success also with my teams, right? The reason when I take over a team, if there's a team that's not really operating at their full potential, the first
Mhm.
thing I do is I look at who are my top 2 or 3 people within this team, right? And
Mhm.
usually it's like this. So you got the top performers right here, and then the next best person is right here. And I see
Mhm.
that there's this huge gap, right?
Yeah.
And then all I do there is I have an exploratory conversation and I take total inventory of what this person is doing. Same thing, right? What are they doing? How are they doing it? What type of leads do they have? What I go through this whole process, right? And
Mhm.
then once I extract all that, then I use them as leverage. So then if I have somebody who's the next best right here, right? Let's say, for example, that this person is selling $100,000 a month, this person is selling 50,000 a month, then I use this person as leverage and say, okay, John, question, you're here right now. This person's here right now. What do you really think is the difference between you and this person? So the time is,
Mm.
well, I don't know. I kind of do what they do and I say what they say. Okay, do you really though? And then I
Mhm.
put them through a process. And then that's when I actually tap into the little ego button, right? And go, well,
Yeah.
no, what would you feel like if you were number two or number one? Or what would make you feel like if you actually became number one, whatever, right? So then we start to do a lot of psychological work around that to
Mhm.
then stimulate the desire for them to then take action on role modeling, following a sales process, doing some personal inventory, right? Or leaving personal baggage, out of the
Mhm.
sales environment or work environment. So when they come to work, they're at peak state. So there's all these little things that we start to do to get people elevated. And then what happens is they start to see progress, right? For the first time in however long. And then that
Mhm.
becomes kind of like a good addiction. And like, oh, wait a second, I just did this milestone. Now I want to do the next milestone. And they start to feel better about themselves. Income starts to go up, life starts to change. And then they
Mhm.
become then that force for good for the other person, right? So then I use a lot of mastermind environments. So we take the top 2, top 3, top 4 people, and then we expose them to the rest of the organization. And we say, okay, and they're sharing best practices. So together as a community, we take
Yeah.
these teams to a whole nother level. Today, I'm doing work for the Merit organization, and
Mhm.
my team is one of the highest performing on an efficiency standpoint teams of the whole company. Culture is the best. All those
That's
type of things. And
huge.
and the beautiful thing here is it's not me. I can't take all the credit. It's that
Mhm.
they themselves have bought into the culture. They
Mhm.
themselves are a tight community, right? And it really wasn't like that at a one point in time, right? There was a lot of a discontentment going on and miscommunication and a little
Mhm.
bit of backstabbing and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, it is a competitive environment, right?
Mhm.
But together as a community, together as a team, we mold, we morph, we become better. And then it's just
Mhm.
awesome because now it's on autopilot, right? Like now the
Yeah.
team just, they just perform consistently, like every day. And it's awesome. So it makes my life easier. It makes the life
Yeah.
of my leadership team easier because it's a fine-tuned, oiled machine. So
That's awesome. And that's got to feel good for the top performers to give them, validation in front of their peers. Like they're going to teach you what they're doing, and that, puts less pressure on you as like the person in charge, but you're like, oh no, these are the top performers. They're going to teach you because we're going to win together.
that's right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's phenomenal. That's awesome. So moving on to our third pillar is all about movement. And we know how important, exercise and moving helps with our mood and helps, just a variety of ways. With that in mind, what are some of your favorite ways when you're not working to move your body?
I'm always moving. So I have stand-up desks everywhere. I have a stand-up desk in my home. I have a stand-up desk in my
Awesome.
office. So I'm always moving. I'm always counting steps.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is I try to find mini workouts throughout the day. For example, instead of
Okay.
taking the elevator, I'll take steps.
Okay.
Just to always try to move. And then I'm always pacing back and forth. I'm kind of a nut job as it is anyway. Like I get antsy just sitting in front of a computer for the longest period of time. So then one of the other things that I've done is it's kind of like a morphed form of meditation because I've tried
Mm-hmm.
meditation, but I don't know, I get like anxiety just trying to sit still. Like it doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
work for me. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I do is I do a breathing exercise along with walking, right? So I have
Mm-hmm.
a paced walking that I do. So let's say, for example, each step is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So I walk counting, right, in my head.
Uh-huh.
And then I
Okay.
do a breathing exercise where I inhale and hold my breath in four. So if I'm walking 1, 2, 3, 4, so then I inhale. And then as
Mm-hmm.
I'm walking still, I hold my breath for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And then I exhale in eight. And then I just do kind of like a walking meditation that pumps me up with oxygen and kind of
Mm-hmm.
gets me going and things like that too. So I'm always moving. I think it's important to move. It's important to have energy.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
Mm-hmm.
motion creates emotion. So the
Mm-hmm.
more that I move, the better I feel. I sometimes there's days where I get lackadaisical. You burning the candle on both ends, and you just wake up in the morning you're like, I'm just gonna stay in bed all day, and you do. When you
Mm-hmm.
stay in bed all day, and then you feel like crap the next day.
Yep.
You're like, well, wait a second, that didn't really work out. So I try to move as much as I can.
I love that. And
On top
that's
of on top of nutrition, I didn't mean to cut you up, but on top of nutrition, I
yeah.
think is really important. So
Mm-hmm.
just me being in tune with my body, I've noticed
Mm-hmm.
that when I start off my day with a big breakfast, I'm sluggish. So
Mm-hmm.
what I love to do is I actually smoothie prep. So I have my week in advance and I have kale and spinach and I have avocados and all kinds of green stuff that I put into my smoothie. And that's my
Yeah.
breakfast. Right? So I start off my breakfast with 32 ounces of a green smoothie. I feel energized, I feel invigorated, and I try not to eat for a few hours after that to let my body absorb all the minerals and nutrients from that. And then
Mm-hmm.
I feel lighter, I feel fresher, I feel like I got more oxygen in my body. And then I have whatever meals I have throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds really fresh and nice. I,
That's
I want to
awesome. I love it.
know. Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the meditative walk with that breathing exercise. That's a new one. I haven't heard that yet. Sounds almost similar to, are you familiar with Wim Hof?
No.
So you might check him out. He's known for the cold plunge therapy and whatnot. He's got a breathing
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
exercise.
yeah. Now I know who you're talking about. Yes.
So when you
Yes.
said the holding part, holding your breath, that's the part that I felt was connected there. So that's phenomenal. Now, do you get like when you're doing these meditative walks, do you get like creative ideas, or are you focusing only on the counting? Like,
Actually only focused on, I try to only focus on counting. It's weird, right? So,
no,
but
that's cool.
it gives me, so first of all, you're out in the open. It's
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's a beautiful day. I've done it in the rain too, and it's good too. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, it's a nice sunny day out. I'm walking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pacing my breathing to my walking, and I'm holding my breath. You know,
Yeah.
um, and it just like I feel like relief almost. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, cool. Now I'm ready for the next couple hours. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it. Sometimes I'll do it multiple times throughout the day, depending if I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling like anxious or because we all feel it, right? But it's again, I'm really in tune with my body. So then I go and I'll tell my team, hey, I'll be right back. I'm going for a walk. And they already know, oh, you're gonna go do that, walking, breathing thing you do. I'm like, yep.
But hey, if it's working for you, and there's actually a lot of literature, in the 70s through 90s, it was all about exercise. Exercise is the number one thing, get in your running routine or go join a fitness class. But in the 2000s, and now we're at now with like counting steps and like you mentioned, the treadmill desk, things like that. What the research says now is our NEAT time, which is our non-exercise activity time, is actually a higher predictor of our health as opposed to that exercise portion, which is about 7 to 10%, give or take a study. So the more we can move throughout the day is going to be more beneficial. So good on you. Keep
100%.
doing what you're doing.
One of the things that I kind of paid attention to, right, is I started thinking, I think it was, I'm trying to figure out who the speaker was that I heard this from. I'm not sure now, but they were talking about, like, first of all, 1/3 of our life is sleeping, laying down,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they were talking about how for some people, they're commuting another 2 to 4 hours a day sitting down, right? Then they're
Yeah.
at work for 8 hours, most of the
Mm-hmm.
time sitting down.
Yep.
Right. And then they might go to the gym for whatever, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour a day, or 3 or 4 times a week. Right. So when you look
Yep.
at it that way, you're like, wait a second, I'm spending 80% of my life sitting down. Like, that's not
Mm-hmm.
healthy. We're not, as humans, we're not designed. That's why we have legs. That's why we can balance ourselves on legs.
Yep.
So we can walk, so we can jump, so we can, move around, so we can squat, right? All those type of
Mm-hmm.
things. So, it's, to me, it's just common sense, right? Like, I just try to do everything I can to move around as much as I can so I don't get stiff. I notice too sometimes when I'm sitting down for a long period of time, I get up, my back hurts, I'm stiff, so I
Mm-hmm.
just try to loosen up all those joints. But I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. Yeah. And that was something too that I noticed in the hospital where this whole Move Happy thing started. A lot of them were sitting down, both staff and patients. And I was like, let's get up and move. Let's go, do some dancing. Let's do something. Cause you're in a locked facility with about 40 feet of white walls. It's not an interesting environment, 2 fresh air breaks a day. Let's do something. Let's have some fun. Let's add some music, whatnot. So good on you for
Absolutely.
that. I think that's phenomenal. Um, so we talked about your planner. Let's go ahead and talk again. How can they order it? What's the best way for them if they want to order it from you?
Yeah. So the best way right now, again, I don't have it on Amazon or anything like that because I'm
Mhm.
really trying to deliver a quality product in a way that really creates the best experience for someone. So they can get it on unslackable.com.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
there's a shopping cart feature there, and it's listed right in there. So, and what I like to do is for people that are ordering it right now for the first 2,000 copies, if there's a little message or a note or something that they want, I'm actually custom writing something
Aw.
for them. So yes, and that's part of the reason I want to do it because if I give it to Amazon, they'll do all the drop shipping and stuff like that, and then we'll lose that portion of it. So
Yeah, I love that. Now, can anyone order it in the world, or is it just in the US?
so right now, so believe it or not, there's people that are overseas but
Hmm.
they have to pay for the shipping, right? So it's about
Okay.
25
Yeah.
bucks. It seems to be like 25 bucks for shipping anywhere else in the world. But if it's within the United States, and obviously it's much easier, it's cheaper. It sells for $34, 34.95. I'm putting 100% of the money right back into my Unslackable foundation of being able to get better equipment. Like you see all this lighting, everything
Hmm.
like that. All this has come from the proceeds
Yeah.
from the planet to be able to provide a better experience for people that are listening to the podcast or getting the information. So yeah, I'm blessed. I don't need the money for that, personally to live my life. And so I'm just
Hmm.
putting everything back and I'm doing a lot of pro bono work as well. So there's a lot of organizations that have me come and do speaking, or there's people that don't have the money that need some coaching sessions. I'm doing 2
Yeah.
people right now it's all pro bono. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I always love to close out the show with a random question to help the audience get to know you a little bit better. Though you've shared a lot already, so I feel like they know you pretty well, but just for random, what is the best gift you've ever received and why?
The best gift is presence. Is
Mhm.
people that are present in your life, right? People
Mhm.
that are willing and able to be. I get goosebumps just thinking about it, right? Because my life is where it is today because it was selfless people along the way that gave me their presence,
Mhm.
that stopped all the noise, focused 100% on me, trying to understand where I was in my life, what I needed to do to get my life to the next level, and
Mhm.
then gave me some golden nuggets to follow, to live, to hold on to. So that is the best gift I've ever
That's
gotten
beautiful.
outside of being able to live, right? Because me going through an environment and a time where I failed to kill myself, I could have killed myself and I wouldn't be here right now. But
I'm
outside of
so glad you
living,
failed on that one.
outside of living, it's
Yeah,
being present.
I love that. Thank you again so much for being on our show today. This has been amazing.
You got it. Well, thank you so much for having me. Be blessed. I love your foundation, and I know that you're going to touch the lives of many, many people, and just keep being a gift to the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin.